G'day, Blood Warriors. In this episode, we are desecrating some blood runes, petting our good old boys Karanak, and talking all things Blades of Khorne. I am joined by the formidable champion of Khorne, Alex Gonzales, who has not only harnessed the raw power of the Blood God, he has channeled his rage of fury to dominate his foes at LVO and claim victory in the name of Khorne. But wait, that is not all. I have alluded to the fact that he went to LVO. You were the top performing Khorne player, ranking 11th out of 300 players, which was a bee's dick away from the top 8. So in this episode, we're going to sharpen our axes. We are going to get our blood-soaked banners ready to go and prepared to be inspired by the wisdom and the tributes by Alex to Khorne. G'day, welcome. Welcome back. And in a not deathly fashion.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm here, not for Night Hunt, not for Soul Blades. So, for those two, not for OBR. So happy to be here. Thank you.
It was definitely surprising. I'm like, right, I got to do a Khorne episode, and I'm looking through LVR. I'm like, right, how has Khorne gone? Because like when you look at Wohammer and you look at some of like the meta stats, Khorne isn't doing that great. Like, you're definitely not at the bottom. You're definitely not at the top. I remember talking to you and a bunch of people at the World Championships who were liking Khorne or getting frustrated with Khorne, and just like there was just this thing, and they were like, right, I want to do well, but I'm struggling, or it's just missing something. And in the current win percentage, they're 46%. So they're not doing the greatest. They're not the worst. They're like the middle. They're like the middle, but at the bottom of the middle. But I mean, 11th out of 300 is incredible. And we know that a battle tome is on its way, or it looks like it's on its way. So I guess this is a good, like, how are we going? What are we looking for? What are we hoping for? But let me ask you, first question coming out of Discord from the big dong himself, Gareth Thomas. What made you start playing Khorne, and how handsome is he?
Oh man, he is one of the most beautiful people I think I've ever met. I'm actually shocked that he's a Khorne player. He really should be a Slaanesh player at least.
I would have said Nurgle, but yeah, go on.
Gareth's actually the reason why I play Khorne. For those who don't know, Gareth is a wonderful TO and a great player and a wonderful opponent. He runs Old Town Throwdown, team event, and singles in Southern California. He's part of Econohammer, which is his own kind of internal team of people who are into money and numbers, Excel wizards. And I played him at a GT, one of the first Old Town Throwdowns or Small Town Throwdowns that I'd won. I got a big belt like the one behind you. Really excited about it. It's a wonderful piece. I have it out in my living room. But in order to get there, round 4, I played against Tomo because he wasn't TOing that event, and I had my Soul Blight. I had like 40 Graveguard and Manfred and Radikar and Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon. This is clearly 3 years ago or 4 years ago. Otherwise, none of that would make sense. And I narrowly like scraped by a win by like a certain type of hair. And afterwards, I was like, wow, this army's amazing. Like the first thing he did with old Garrison rules, there was a terrain piece at this game store that was like 18 inches wide by 10 inches, 18 inches, wide by like 10 inches deep for some reason. And just turn 1, he had the old Khorne Demon Prince, like with the 18-inch bubble of like half charge, half run, just like immediately put it inside of there. And I was like, and it was debilitating for me. And I was so interested in Khorne after that game. I was like, I cannot not play this army. So like 3-4 months later, after that event, I had built enough of an army to actually bring to events. But yeah, it was Tomo all the way.
Outside of the ego trip, and Darrel, a good player. This is not the Gareth show. This is the Blades of Khorne show. It's obviously great. Like, these people who champion their faction, it's hard to not be inspired. And I think it's hard for me, even like on this channel, like I talk to passionate people like you and like other guests. And it's like, man, I feel inspired to start this army. Like literally the last episode before this one was a Fire Slayers one. And talking to a Fire Slayers player, I'm like, this is a range that I haven't really liked, but talking to you makes me inspired to play. And Khorne is an army that I think is just metal. Like it is sick. And we'll find out a bit more about why you like Khorne. But when I look at the models, like the rules have always kind of held me back a little bit. Like it's not as inspiring as I've ever wanted it to be. But the model range and just what Khorne's all about just sings to me. It's like the destruction version of chaos, but minus the rules to make it destruction. Like, I just want to smash things. I want to kill things. And I just want to have a great time. I don't want to do the shenanigans at Blood Tie. I don't want the little cheeky shenanigans. Just give me all smash.
Okay.
What brings you to Khorne? So let's put Gareth aside for a second. What's made you inspired? What's drawn to you? And how are you finding it in 4th edition? Like, is it still, like, obviously DP aside, you can't do that little garrison trick anymore. Like, how are you finding their play style in 4th?
Yeah, well, the reason why I was so attracted to Khorne after, playing Gareth and then exploring them for myself was due to the kind of toolkit. They, at face value, like books cover, they look like a Unga Bunga, like run in, charge, get into combat immediately army. In reality, that's not how they play. And ironic and weird, and oddly enough, they don't play that way in 40K. They don't play that way in AoS. They don't play that way in Total War, Warhammer, right? They play very techy. And like if you were to, again, judge a book by its cover, it looks like it is not techy at all. So it's one of those kind of like I don't want to call it an underdog list army because it's not, but it's definitely an army where, like, on face value, if you've never fought against it before, if you don't know anything about Khorne, you're going to think it plays one way, only to realize that it plays a very different way. I'm not a Magic player, so I don't want to make any Magic players angry, but like it looks like a red list, but it's actually a blue list. More so in 3.0 than 4.0, but still.
Yeah, and that's probably what's held me back as a player. I'm like, if it was more Unga Bunga, like, it doesn't have to be like all Unga Bunga. I don't have to be like Beast Claw Raiders or Gargants and just run forward. But like, you look at Slaves to the Darkness with their stupid banner, a 3d6 charge. I'm like, bro, that should be Blood Warriors. That should be like some like Blood Letters or something. Like Blood Letters 3d6 charge. Give it to me.
You can give it to them.
You know what I'm saying? My saying is that that's what I'm. But it's not about me. Like, it's for me. Like, you're right. It's super techy. It doesn't look like what you'd think it does in a play style, and it allows you to do a lot of tricks and a lot of shenanigans, which I think gives it depth, right? Because like, if you're all gas, no brakes, then you're either going to win or you get a hard loss.
Yeah, that's the challenge with the army. Slaves is a hard list to fight against. I'm just going to say that right now. It's a side note. They are full Unga right now. And yeah, I can definitely understand the sentiment as to why you would want Khorne to be that way. You can play it that way. It's just difficult. But my gripe is, like, when I look over the fence, and for the last 7 months, we've had double fighting Vanguard. We've had 3d6 charging, either through demonic speed or, banners. It's like, man, that's what I want from Khorne. I want to be able to do blood letters. I want to have, my juggernauts. I want to have my various things. And, but again, at the same time, anyway, it's not about me. Not about me. I love Khorne. Love the models. I am like so ready to buy Bloodthirster. It's not funny. Yeah.
Which actually reminds me, someone did ask me, fuck, marry, kill on the Bloodthirst.
Well, can it be the conversions? Because Gareth does have a great.
This is not his show. This is not his show. Otherwise,
fine. God, I hate that you did FML. Or FMK.
Surely we want to marry or at least fuck the Insensate Rage, right? Like that.
The Insensate Rage, yeah. I didn't know if cursing was allowed on this, so I was trying to play it safe. So definitely fucking Insensate Rage, because freaking sheets Sometimes you just gotta roll the dice and see what happens. So perfect. Mary, Insensate Rage. No, sorry. Mary, Unfettered Fury, because it's reliable, it works, it's consistent, and it's great. So definitely marry that. I don't want to say rules wise kill the Wrath of Khorne, but like of the group, the Wrath of Khorne had an interesting, it did recently get an update where you can have a Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster and also bring in a second Bloodthirster in the same regiment, which makes it better, but it's kind of just lame. It's just like, it's not as cool.
I'm going to start some controversy and say kill Scarbrand.
And I didn't even realize Scarbrand was on the menu. Yeah, no, I would kill Scarbrand. Yeah, I would kill Scarbrand for sure. On paper, he's great, but he's not as great as he used to be. And he's really expensive for not a lot.
He's hurt me a few times too many, where that's why I want him dead.
Yeah.
But look, Khorne, generally cool army, good rules if you like that style. Where do you think they've struggled? Like you referred to slaves a little bit, and I did mention earlier the 46% win percentage right now in February. Like where are they at with the meta, and like what do they do well, and what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome? We will get to the LVO list in a second, but like just what were the things that you were concerned about heading into the Las Vegas Open, and what were the matchups, or what did you have to build into in order to get the most out of Khorne?
Well, I played a lot of the end of 3.0 Khorne pretty consistently up until the very end of the edition. With 4.0, I think the first 3-4 months, I almost exclusively did Night Haunt for obvious reasons. But the biggest, so I came into LVO and I came into 4.0 with Khorne with a little bit of a different kind of mindset with how to play the game. Some of my teammates, some of my captains even on the Corsairs will even joke around being like, oh guys, Alex is learning 4.0 now. He's playing core. He's not playing Night Haunt. He actually has to learn the core mechanics of the game. And so I did. They're not wrong. Rude, but not wrong. A big point to learn was kind of like limitations with movement prior to Field Sergeant, and limitations to your access to like board control in certain missions versus certain armies. When we get into LVO, I'll tell you about one particular game that ended up being kind of a very uphill battle for me. But overall, I would say just like understanding some of the biggest hurdles that I had found in 4.0 was really just kind of like understanding the limitations of that army is, I think, the safest bet here.
I heard some struggles at the World Championships, which was end of November. We obviously had the Battle Scroll come out in December. You mentioned Field Sergeant already. How did you find some of those Battle Scroll changes, even things like Field Sergeant? Has that helped you a lot? Is that something that, something that was bad has now become really good for XYZ reason?
It's not that something that was bad became good. It's that something that was good became better. Field Sergeant was a giant boon to the Khorne army, specifically the one that I play, just because of the way that I play my list in particular, and the way that I found a lot of my kind of peers or our peers also play Khorne to kind of like a positive degree. There's a lot of different ways to play Khorne because of how many war scrolls there are, and kind of that actually leads to something later on about some of the issues I have with the army. But with like Mortals in particular, which was my army, Field Sergeant is a giant boon. The extra 2-inch move can be a game. It was a game changer, frankly. Playing it with and without the battle scroll, I can say it was like almost a night and day difference, depending on your mobility, your control, your threat range, and how other people play against your army. That goes into like the idea of sometimes when you play Khorne, As a Khorne player, I can say sometimes it messes, especially with opponents that know what Khorne can do. It messes with the game because they look at your army, they know what it can do, and then they analyze and sometimes overanalyze, avoiding situations that put them in a bad place, and it like can make the game a little bit longer. You're kind of waiting there, seeing them, him and ha about what their movements are going to be. And so it can lead to that. So an extra 2-inch move, your extra mobility really adds a lot to the table.
Going back to a point that I was talking about with my little destruction brain that I have, Brawl97 from Discord had asked, are we destruction brained? Should we be? Mortals are quite good, but monster mashed thirstilists seem to be putting up numbers. That was the comment. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen too many of the demon armies actually put up numbers, but I mean, they have in the past. I used to play all demons as well in 3.0 and saw a lot of success with that. So I definitely agree with that to some degree. I love Khorne because it does suffer. It almost suffers from the same issue as Slaves or Stormcast, where there's just a lot of war scrolls. There aren't as many there, but there's a lot. And there's basically two different ways to play demons and mortals. And even though there's a sub-faction that benefits from having both, it's really kind of like the lesser of both worlds. So you really want to lean into full one or full demons, full mortals. And if you play full demons, you can still see some success. You're just going to have some really hard counters that you're going to encounter. But, as going to the tournament scene, like I would say maybe 30% of the reason why people can place the way that they do can be matchups sometimes. So you could, when you roll a dice, it's random, you can play, like a few bloodthirsters or a bunch of demons in general, and it can be a full Unga army, like full run in, charge in as fast as I can army. And you could 4-1 or 5-0, or if you fight against your hard counters for 4 games in a row, you can go 1-4. So it's like high risk, high reward potentially. But I mean, that's a big risk.
It is a very big risk. And we are going to showcase a few different lists, not just Alex's one, but we do actually have an alternative build, which I'm excited about, who did also well, LVO. And there was also one that was the Thirster list. So if you're here listening going, give me some inspiration so I can run my Thirsters and have a heavy Thirster list, we'll have one. And we'll talk a bit about, where they're at and what we think and things like that. Maybe one final question, and then I'll go into your list if that's cool. It's a bit of a two-parter, actually, because I've got 2 people asking similar questions. One of them just asked it in a very nicer way. So 42 had asked, how are mixed pure demons and pure mortal lists? Pause that for a second. Then Tomo asked, do you think there is an imbalance between mortals and demons? If mortals are currently doing better, is that because Games Workshop assumed correctly, that only low brain power players use mortals, but they overcompensated in the handicap and made them too good? FYI, Tomo is a pure demon player, so he's a bit snarky when it comes to demons versus mortals. Back to you. Where are we at with demons versus mortals? Is it is it go all in on one? Is there a blend? Is it a 70-30? Is there a power discrepancy? What's your take on Khorne and the two sides?
Well, that's a complicated answer. I will start by saying something that I know Tomo's not going to like, and I know this isn't meant to be the Tomo show, but in reality, spoiler alert, he is one of the sweetest, nicest people I think I've ever met. If he watches this episode, he'll know that I've taken screenshots every time he said something nice, and I have a folder for it. So I have proof. I got screenshots. I got receipts that he can, in fact, be a nice person. However, generally online, he likes to not present himself that way, which is fine. You're allowed to.
He's the Scar brand of real life.
Yeah. Or he's his conversion, honestly. But deep inside, he's a little sweetie pie. I love him so much. He's such a great guy. That being said, the Khorne and the Khorne Mortals, Khorne Demon list, the viability of that makes it really tough because of point costs. I find some things to be weirdly point costed. Blood Warriors are pretty appropriately costed. I feel like some demons are a little bit weirdly costed that kind of prevent a good dynamic. Just when you actually build a list, if you want to make synergy, you end up being like a little over 2K in some proper lists, and it makes things kind of frustrating. You also have a discrepancy in mobility. You look at, even with Field Sergeant with the extra 2-inch move, all the mortals are 5-inch move, with the exception of 8-inch move Skull Crushers, 8-inch move Blood Crushers, and honestly, greater demons that are bloodthirsters that are pretty fast, but dogs that are 8-inch move as well. You start to get in kind of a weird scenario because like you want a lot, but like in order to get, let's say, an Unga list with mortals and demons, you got to have like the Unfettered Fury for a 3d6 charge, or Scarbrand with a 3d6 charge. But then you also may want like the Bloodstoker, so that you can have like a 7-inch plus 7 plus d6 inch run in charge from a mortal unit, but that's not the same. So your threat zones aren't the same. So it's super dice dependent if you want to do things, unless you want to be completely reactionary. And I think that a demon mortal list shouldn't be reactionary, just because you're not really getting a benefit from either list. I hate to say it, but you feel like you're getting kind of like the negative parts of both types of armies. You're not really, it's like a competent player will see that list, know the double activation between mortals and demons, and they'll mitigate it completely. They'll be like, cool, well, I just charged all demons this turn, or all mortals, or one unit,
I think the other thing as well, and I heard a lot of gripes, at least in the first 6 months of the 4th edition, was the restriction in list building with like your bloodthirsters, where people want to have more of a blend, but unfortunately all of your bloodthirsters, I haven't looked at Scarbrand, but they're only really demons, right? Like, yeah, some of them have like a few little side pieces here and there, but they're mostly restricted to just the demon keywords. So to do a blend seems to be quite difficult, especially if someone wants to run, I guess, a double thirster, or they want to have one thirster. They're basically sitting there by themselves because maybe they don't want to take the blood letters. So I don't know. Is that still a thing?
That it really depends. The Scarbrand can just be taken in a list by Scarbrand can be included in a mortals list, and I wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to say blame the person, but I would understand why you would want to do that, just because of the threat that Scarbrand can create. However, that's kind of a difficult kind of list to run. When we look at Unfettered Fury, and I'm just double checking his rules right now to make sure that I'm right in what I'm going to say, because it has been a minute since I played Unfettered Fury. I think that he can be really useful because of that 3d6 charge that he can either give himself or to a friendly unit. So it's a non-unique Blades of Khorne demon unit. So it unfortunately does lean into the demon list specifically, but he still can give it to himself. So he can become, in a mortals list, he can exist as a vacuum of like, cool, he has the Angrath King of Blades, the shut off ward saves for enemy hero. He can move 12 inches, murder less 6 with the proper heroic trait, and then he can run in and either charge 3d6 or just murder less that into combat. So he can go, his 24 inches and, straight into combat, or you can move 18 with the 3d6. So it's like, take your pick.
I think one of the other cool things as well, I know I'm just sidetracking for a second, I'm just double checking the unit details, is I love that some of the bloodthirsters, was it your Insensate Rage and your Wrath, or two, it's a couple of the, can be the Baleful Lord. And with the current season, getting that prized beast or prized monster for the +1 to hit automatic and just go out, be free. If you want to run double thirster in the General's Regiment, there's a little bit of sauce there. It's a little expensive potentially for you, your 16 odd wounds, but if you want to play that style, you can absolutely slap. I think for me, as I look through just the Thirster build, Scarbrand aside, because you can be anybody, it's the restriction, I guess, on your other Thirsters, which makes it a little hard, especially to your point. They are on the pricier side around the 400 mark. Holy crap, that's 470.
470.
Boom 70s, 470.
Yeah.
That's
So
16 wounds.
Funny you mentioned this today, earlier this morning, casual conversation in my team's voice chat. I was talking to Jeremy Vessier and we had that discussion. There was a discussion about a different army, about what armies pay attacks in their points cost for their faction abilities. And Jeremy had mentioned Bloodthirsters specifically, and he did mention the numbers. Some of them are 470, some of them are not. Some of them are, Scarbrand's 490. It's like it gets real tricky and real silly. They don't do as much as their point costs allow. And with it, besides Unfettered Fury, arguably giving another unit a 3d6 charge is pretty strong. They overall though kind of don't do much. The six attacks in combat, prize beast can be helpful to keep them there. But I don't know. Every time I play them, I played doubles at LVO, and my list was literally just Wrath of Khorne, Bloodthirster, Unfettered Fury, and Skull Taker. It was a 3-model list, 3 heroes, with my twin brothers, Soulblight Gravelords. So like he had the bodies, I had the hero punch, and even then it was just kind of like Prize Beast was on a unit, but it didn't really matter. It gets tricky with all Monster Mash.
Yeah, it's hard in the current season, especially with some of like the battle tactics you've got available, the amount of objectives on the table. It is hard, and it's probably also why even like in my world with Suns, you don't see a lot of 4 mega lists. They're often like 3 megas and a bunch of small babies, just because we don't like running them, but we need them for objective control and objective scoring. And, going, because a Bloodthirster is almost the price of a Mega Gargant. You're not far off. Like actually my War Stompers are 470. So we're War Stomper and that Boomthirster are same price, right? So yeah, 470. 470 is a War Stomper.
Yeah, I guess so. Oh, I did not know that.
470. I think Kraken Eater and that's 470. Your Gatebreaker's like 500. Your Beast Smasher's like 490 or something. And then Brod's like, I don't know, 520.
No way.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Sorry.
It's literally double the point. It's double the wounds count almost.
And that's where I was going with, like, I love the idea of Thirsters, but like the price point to me, if you want to run them, amazing. Go run them. You'll have fun. But you can't go all in on the 3 like we saw in 3rd edition. We did see 2s and 3s. It does. You've got to really find some efficiency. I don't know, a bunch of units of doggos just to score objectives, and like you're relying on those Thirsters to do the heavy lifting. And there's so many good units right now with like Wrathmongers and Bloodstokers and Blood Warriors. You're going to talk about one of the Regiments of Renown that's done a lot of good value for you. So we'll go to that in a second. But I think that's my point, is like that's the style I want to run. And I'm like, it's not really the right time for me. No, let's get some points discounts. Let's go down. Let's go down a little bit.
The demons need a point decrease. Absolutely.
Let's tariff those other units, those other faction. Bring the price down.
I can't deal with that. You have to. Let's see how that.
All right, I'll bring it up. As an Australian, we just laugh at tragedies. So I'm going to bring this up. Let's have
I'm a government employee, so god dang it. Okay.
So, Alex, this is your LVO list. You were 11th out of 300. So you were 5-1 or 4-1?
I got 11th place. I was 4-0-1. So I had one tie. My tie was a very interesting one. It was a wonderful game against I'm going to name drop James O'Brien. He is one of the judges for the Warhammer Open events. He is a fantastic human being. I tried my best. I literally I was overconfident saying, "Hey, I won this game," and he's like, "Hey, we're tied on points." I was like, "Cool, I need to get one more point, bottom of 5 to beat you." And unfortunately, dice is as dice is. I did not. So I tied, and I went 1 tie, 4 wins.
So you're still at the top again, very, very close. Overconfidence is becoming a theme, Alex, between World Championship of VO. I think there might be a reflection moment here.
It's almost a problem. Yeah.
So let me read out the list, and then you can explain a little bit about, I guess, a couple of things, right? Like, what's the list do? Why you picked what you picked? What were you worried and what were you concerned about? We did see some of the stats coming out that Stormcast and Slaves were the most represented factions at LVO and CanCon at the same time. So, they were like miles ahead when it came to popularity. And when you look at the subsets, the Chosen, and there was particular builds that really stood out. But anyway, let me read out the list, and then you can talk to me about how it works and what you were hoping and all of that stuff, right? So you were Khorne, you were the Bloodbound War Horde. You obviously had your Blessings of Khorne as your prayer law. You had Forbidden Power as a manifestation law. Oh my gosh, how did Khorne get spells? We'll get to that in a second. You were 2,000 points on the nose, 5 drops. You had the General's Regiment, which was Mighty Lord of Khorne, who's the General Favored of Khorne. You then had Blood Warriors Reinforced, Blood Stokers. You then had the Inspiring Deathbringer, which had the King of Blades. You then had a Blood Warriors Reinforced, Blood Secrator as another regiment, which was the Realm Gore Ritualist, the Claws of Karanak, 2 units of Wrathmongers. You then had the Regiment of Renown from the Gunner Brand and his friends. So, a lot to unpack here. 5 drops, one of the bigger drops when it comes to the discussions I've had, at least on this channel. People seem to landing on that 2 to 3 mark. Another potential thing that the latest Battle Scroll introduced was getting that additional, I guess, boost. Talk to me.
Yeah. About the reason why this list is built the way that it is.
Yeah, man, let's unpack this. Right. Like, if I'm like what were you hoping to achieve? How does it work? What were you worried about? Tell me combos.
A little bit of this is being a little stinker. So that is the reason why it is not a 4-drop list, as it obviously can be. You look at it and say, Alex, you can just put the Blood Secrator over into the General's Regiment, and bingo bongo, you have a 4-drop instead of a 5-drop. But I wanted a 5-drop because I wanted to almost always guarantee 2 honor guard. Did it always end up mattering during my games? No, but it wasn't my little Timmy mindset of wanting to make sure that it stayed there in terms of Magic player type, terms. Yes, it did. I always wanted to have 2 regiments of renown, 2 honor guards. And the best way to do that was to always make sure that I was 5 drops. So the Blood Secrator was also very helpful for, I don't want to say null deploy, but if I played against a 2-drop list and one half of my opponent's army was dropped, I'd be like, cool, Blood Secrator, drop the rest of your army, if they were the attacker. So I really, really enjoyed playing 5 drops. Historically, I play really high drops. In 3.0 Khorne, I also played an obscene number of drops back in 3.0, 11 to 12 drops. When it comes to the Soulblight list that I used to play, same thing, high level of drops. So I really, really enjoy just being able to be I don't care whether or not I go first or second. And I like to build lists that do that work with going, whether or not I go first or second. That's a really big, important point for me, both from a tech piece and from a strategy piece. Do you want me to talk a little bit more about my list?
Yeah, man, go for it. I guess, let me just, I have one small thing, and please continue. I guess that is the unga bunga we've been talking about, where you don't care if you go first or go second. You're not reliant on, applying a certain buff, getting in an absolute smashing face, turn 1. It's not something that you need in your identity. So I love that you've embraced I don't care. Like, I want to have as many units as I can, generating those blood ties. I'll get those second honor guard rules. I'll build a list that I've got a plan for going first. I've got a list that'll go second in battle round 1. I've got the tools. It's now just making the most of that toolkit.
Honestly, I'm going to say something very controversial here. 1 to 2 drops, cringe. Very cringe. Just play as many drops as you like. It doesn't matter. We are a drop positive community.
Yeah, I don't think you actually really care. Like I don't think you actually care, and I think it's a really good mindset to adopt. Is you don't have to race to the bottom, and your faction doesn't really lean into going 1 drop anyway. So if you can't go 1 drop, and if you force yourself to go 2 drops, you've got a good chance of going first. But do you really need it? Probably not for you. So do what you need to do. Be okay with going 5 or 6 or 8 drops, whatever works for you, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's pretty simple to just go with whatever drops you're comfortable with, honestly, frankly. Yeah, so that's my list. I mean, I guess I would say one of the most important parts of this is going to be the Regiment of Renown, as well, which is the Brand's Oathbound, which makes me feel a little bit bad playing with wizards, but Forbidden Power is something that has been a gigantic boon for the army in terms of just an overall toolkit and utility as well.
What's that? And we'll talk about that, and then I want to go back to the units that you've got from Khorne. Is what does the Gunner Brand and friends do? 'Cause it's a bit of a mixture of units, right? You know, you got a little hero. It brings obviously a wizard in. You've got a little bit of shooting, a little bit of combat, a little bit of stuff. Like, what's the value here at 250?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different lists there's a lot of different regiments that can be added. Right now, Khorne is very bizarre in terms of point costs. Where 250, if I were to subtract 250 from this list, there's not a good, there's not a lot of really good options that I could take and still be at 2000. I'd probably be at 1960 or 1970. And usually those extra units would be probably 2 extra dog units or Closet Karanak or a heavy unit and a cheap unit. It would not be a good kind of overall list. It would be very oblong. Right now, Brand's Oathbound is 250 points, and that gives you 2 heroes, an entire regiment that's 5-up saves with no ward, so easy to kill, which Blood Tithe likes, and it would be consisting of a 5-inch move hero that is kind of okay against enemy heroes, and a very, very fast shooting 4-wound hero that's very easy to kill, and then a 9-wound 3-model unit of bodyguard plus 1 wizard, and overall that's a pretty helpful it's 3 blood tithe points is what I see out of that, out of just 19 wounds, and 19 wounds is a 5-up save, no ward, and it ends up being really, really helpful. Whether it's just throwing the 2 heroes out to just die, whether it's having a hero not be able to be seen from shooting attacks because they're within 3 inches or combat engagement range of the 3-man non-hero Oathsworn unit, whether it's the War Scroll spell on the Oathsworn, which is a wildly good spell against, unfortunately, Sons of Bahamut, or a lot of Monster Mash hero lists. It's a very, very big tech piece.
Yeah, it's a great little unit where it gets, as you said, it gives you multiple options for Blood Tithe. You get the wizard, which then allows you to use Forbidden Power, and I will ask you in a second why Forbidden Power over the rest. But it's a nice little package. It's not your damage dealer. It'll help you score battle tactics. It'll help you screen. It'll give you Blood Tithe. It'll give you spells. It's a good little utility piece for 250's fair.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good. I think that it's fair. I don't think it's overpriced. I don't think it's underpriced. I think that's like exactly where it needs to be.
Outside of the Gunner brand and friends, like what do I need to know about your list to make it work? Like, are there particular synergies? Are there like is in particular, like why do you reinforce the Blood Warriors? It's a lot of points in Blood Warriors. Like why them over Bloodletters or Wrathmongers or like other things?
Yeah. So my list is very clearly themed and directed towards mortals. At least in this starting period of 4.0, mortals seem to have a little bit more of the positive deal in terms of their battle formation. Being able to be the Bloodbound Warhorde means that you can be +1 to hit against enemy units that are contesting an objective you don't control. That doesn't mean you have to be on the objective. That just means you have to be attacking an opponent's unit that controls an objective that you don't control, or contest an objective you don't control. Super duper convenient. Comes up more often than I would like, though I didn't play it at all during LVO, or at least I forgot about it, because of another mechanic in this list, which made the remembering it really kind of a moot point. But mortals are slower, but it allows you to be a lot more reactionary because of how slow they are. They are less unga. Blood Warriors, 2 units of 20. It is a lot of points. That is 840 points, but it is 840 points worth of 3-up saves. They don't have a ward, but that is going to be 80 wounds for that point cost. And every time they die, they have the murder rolls of 2 dice per dead Blood Warrior in combat range of the enemy unit. On a 5-up, they cause mortal wounds. So they don't really, they do a lot of damage now that they're 3 attacks instead of 2 attacks like they were in the past. But in addition to their extra attack helping them out a little bit for hitting on 4s, their mortal wounds when they die can be so helpful, so important.
I imagine the Wrathmongers are also there to synergize with the Blood Warriors, and that's why you've got 2 units of Wrathmongers to support those 2 reinforced Blood Warriors, or am I making stuff up?
Absolutely. I would say that you're not making this stuff up. I mean, that is absolutely the correct move, is to have them support the Wrathmongers. At least one of them needs to support the Wrathmongers. The second one, sometimes, depending on my opponent, depending on how deployment was, maybe both Wrathmongers is supporting the Blood Warriors. Maybe one is just going off on their own little adventure. One of the most Wrathmongers kept a rule that I honestly did not think that they were going to keep in 4.0, which is a defensive mechanic. They are 3 wounds each with a 5-up save. Very easy to kill. However, once the hit against them reflects mortal wounds back. So one of the most satisfying things to happen is if I get 3d6 charged, if let's say a chosen unit, Slaves of Darkness chosen unit, gets a 3d6 charge, they do a 17-inch charge right into 5 Wrathmongers that are worth 120 points. They kill that unit, but let's say they roll 4 1s, 5 1s. Well, they've just lost 2 chosen, and they've killed my unit, and I didn't even get to attack back. I'm a happy guy. Like, that's 2 less chosen I have to deal with. It's even better if they're in combat with like a unit of 20 witches or something like that. Like, will they survive? Unlikely, but will they accidentally do enough damage to make it kind of an even trade? Probably. I don't think that you should run all Wrathmongers, but they are still an incredibly good tech piece, and they're cheap.
Actually, funny you mention that, because somebody in Discord, Big Naito, saying, I saw a list with 35 Wrathmongers in a team's tournament. How the hell do you play it? And I imagine it'd be similar if I ran like an all fanatic Gloomspite Gits list, just absolute terror on the table. An opponent goes, what the hell am I doing? And you're just cashing in on Blood Tide.
I fully agree with you. I think that you have to play it just like the Fnatic list. You just have to throw it up into your opponent and hope that they have enough attacks to make it bad for them. That's hilarious. That is a wonderful teams list. I want to run it now.
Don't say that to me. I've got a teams tournament in a few weeks' time, and I have to submit my list in 3Ks. Not that I have 35 Wrathmongers, but I do have like 30 fanatics. So I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll run an all fanatic list. But I tell you what, Wrathmongers trade up really well. I think that's the key, right? For 120 points, what do you get? 15 wounds. You get a great little buff to Bloodbound. You get some nice little defensive buffs if, people are throwing volume of attack. And you need to throw volume of attack into this unit. You can't just chip away at them, and you've got to throw volume, which is where those ones inflicting mortals back. And you can't ignore them. Like, yeah, they only do damage 1, but they got 4 attacks each, crit 2 hits, so they can pump out a lot of damage for 120 points. Like, that's great.
Yeah, they are really, really worth it. And again, 4 attacks each. The defensive mechanic, I'm yet to find the scenario. So they are limited, right? So in 4.0, their bubble of plus, they also give a bubble of +1 attack. It used to be a bubble of just +1 attack wholly within 12 inches. Now it's wholly within 12 inches only if they're in combat, only for mortals. So it further reinforces the idea of keeping them in a mortal list, and exclusively a mortal list. But they are a fun little treat. I just think, like, I personally, again, this goes into like the Timmy mindset. Like, I don't enjoy spamming one thing. I like to have a little bit, like, I always think, like, is this a multi-tool? Is this, a Leatherman? Or is this a Swiss Army knife? Or am I just playing with a cleaver? You know what I mean? Like, Wrathmongers are very good in techie.
Yeah, they are. And I like that you have to now force them into combat, because in previous editions, they'd be sitting in the back of a buff piece. You're like, nah, man, this is not what this unit's about. Like, come on, Khorne would not reward this.
No. Why?
You mentioned, like, having diversity in tools, and probably one thing that's really missing for me, and I'm curious on your thoughts, is this season has had a heavy emphasis, at least for the first 6 months, on Cav, and you are missing those mighty Skull Crushers. Obviously, you're also missing Blood Crushers, but you're not playing Demons, so ignore that for a second. Why no Skull Crushers? Like, what did they not have, or what does this list do better that you didn't need Cav?
Yeah, that's super easy. They just did not have the damage mechanic. Skull Crushers are better than they were in 4.0, at least in my opinion. However, they are still very, 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 very expensive for their, 5 wounds each on a 2-up save. They're over 200 points. They need to be either like at 200 or just below, in my opinion. Maybe that's wish listing. Maybe that's a fool's errand. I don't know if anyone in Games Workshop is listening. However, they just don't do the damage. They are nothing but a wound sink. They are 2-up save. They're really, really helpful, but they don't do much besides be 8-inch move, 2-up save. I can't personally condone myself bringing a list that has Skull Crushers in it or Blood Crushers in it right now. Not to say that I haven't seen very, very talented players float the idea elsewhere about bringing that, because I have seen that, but I haven't seen it applied. And I think that it's going to suffer pretty greatly unless there's a battle score or an update that lowers the points cost of those units.
I wonder, is this just a unit that you don't need? Like, you just don't need, not that you don't need them, but like, you're maximizing your blood tithe, and not that you want everything to die immediately, but those 5 wounds, 2-up save is super tanky, right? So you can go in, pin something, and really grind them down. Love that. But they're not doing much damage, and they're not dying. So it's like, I mean, you know what? Maybe just having 1 or 2 of them, like a reinforced unit of 2, almost similar to like what Gore Grunters are doing right now, where they're going out having 2 units of Gore Grunters. They don't do a lot of damage, but they pin an opponent and they let the rest of your force do what they want to do. I don't know if that's a role or a style or just something that, to your point, is maybe a little bit too expensive. But it's always weird that like they've always been about heavy armor. Yes, I know the demon version does a little more damage, but it's been a long time since I've seen this unit properly outside of like a reinforced unit here or there.
It's hard. I wish that there was a better solution or better answer. Brass Stampede doesn't exist anymore. There is a subfaction that allows you to get benefits for cavalry. I believe it strikes first if you roll with an 8-inch charge, but it requires you to either have solely demons, solely mortals, or mix, specifically of cavalry, and it's not super helpful. So I think that Games Workshop should kind of go back to the drawing board if they want to see an improvement on cavalry in a Khorne list, because right now Blood Crushers are overcosted, Skull Crushers are maybe, arguably, in my opinion, overcosted. And then you have the ability to add the I forgot the name of the regiment, but it's the Slaves of Darkness regiment that is unit of Chaos Warriors, the unit of Chaos Knights.
Oh yeah.
There's that, and the Chaos Knight hero. It's not super helpful, but there's not a lot of really good cavalry options in the army right now. Plus, there's only 2, and there's a dichotomy between mortal and demon, and the fact that it's like segregated to exclusively those amounts means that the subfaction that we talked about before, double activate with mortals and demons, is kind of like the lesser of both worlds. And it also means that all the other subfactions aren't as useful if you want to run like a very mixed or a hybrid list.
I'm just thinking, like, how cool would it be if we dialed down the save characteristic back to a 3, but made them like mini Vanguard? Like, give me double fight or something. Like, make them mini Vanguard rather than like a super mobile anvil. Anyway, we're wish listing here. Interesting why, like, I don't know. Well, look, I've said this, but like, sorry, anything else you want to share on your list? Because I do want to preview 2 other LVO lists that were definitely different to yours, and maybe you can explain a little bit about what you liked and any thoughts. But anything else on your list that I should know about?
Yeah, one of the best things was the fact, and I mentioned this earlier in the Discord, in this recording, is that I often forgot my subfaction ability for Bloodhound Warhorde, or flat out did not need to know it because of the Realm Gore Ritualist. Now, online, even in your server, almost always, if you see a priest, it's going to be a blood slaughter priest, and they are incredibly helpful. On a 3-up, you can get an extra blood tithe and do mortal wounds to a nearby unit or yourself. The slaughter priest can kill himself, get 2 blood tithe instead of 1. Super duper helpful. However, there is a 50-point difference between a 160-point slaughter priest and a 110-point Realm Gore Ritualist. And I'm generally always trying to go for optimization if I can. And that Realm Gore Ritualist has been clutch. You know, is it meant there to fight? No. Is it meant to really do anything? Generally not. Especially with Forbidden Power in my list. It's not so many manifestations. It's probably maybe once, twice, thrice per game casting Unholy Flames, which is minus or +1 to rend for a friendly unit. Sometimes I save that up to make sure that it's +1 to rend, +1 to wound, depending on the list, which requires an 8 or better. But the Realm Gore Ritualist, once per game, at the end of in my movement phase, if it's within a combat range of a terrain piece or an objective, it can use its dagger and kind of like scry and put graffiti on that terrain piece or on that objective. And then there becomes, for the rest of the game, a +1 to hit bubble for all friendly mortals wholly within 12 of that terrain piece or objective. Obviously, objective is always going to be a larger, kind of like a larger area of effect, since it's not like a pinpoint wholly within 12. It's a large item, you know, and depending on the army, depending on the the place that you're playing at. Sometimes terrain pieces are way too big than they should be. So
No, so no. Are you talking just desecrating blood runes?
Yeah.
No. It's the target. It's the first of the battle and 1-hit rolls for combat attacks made by friendly bloodbound units while they're wholly within 12 inches of the target.
Yeah.
Oh, so the targets pick a friendly objective or terrain feature within. Oh,
Yes, that's why.
Right. So it's the target isn't the ritualist. The target is the terrain feature or the objectives, and then you measure 12 inches from the objective or the.
Right. It's really dependent. Sometimes you play against, you play a list, you're playing on a table and has very sparse terrain. And honestly, that's probably a little bit more equal. You're still going to be useful as long as it's not that small pinpoint like on a terrain piece. Objective piece. You're always going to have a good time because you're always going to have a pretty significant range of +1 to hit.
Yeah, that's neat. And the fact that she's a priest as well, again,
Mm-hmm.
she's like that wizard profile. If you get in and it slaps and, Rend 2, D6 damage for 1 attack. So, if it goes in, like, it's definitely not a combat monster, but it can do well and it does its thing. And a good call out, especially if you're running out of points really quickly and you look at a 50-point difference between, what did you say, the Slaughter Priest? What was the other one you were saying? No.
Yeah, Slaughter Priest versus a Remgore Ritualist.
If you're over points, this is an easy, cheeky way to get under points, or maybe you're playing for that extra command point in turn 1 and you want to go to 1950. Not a bad little option.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. It's my favorite one so far.
Any final comments about your list, or we'll go to the other two?
No, I mean, this is pretty straightforward. It is a mortal list. It does well. I did well with it. Try it out.
All right, last thing, and then we'll go to the next list. Anything you learnt about the faction or this list from that LVO experience? Like, was there something that really stood out for you as maybe something that did better than you expected, or maybe, like anything that kind of surprised you from your LVO experience with this list?
Yeah, I actually had a very, very close game at LVO. It was very nerve-wracking against a guy who is in my region, and I narrowly won because of retreating plus murder lust, which is incredibly helpful. But this list, I would say, if it has a weakness, is the fact that it has challenges against alphas with good armor saves. So, I had played against somebody who had run a Sylvaneth list. It was Sylvaneth Monster Mash. They had Alariel, Belthanos, and Spirit of Jericho.
Yep.
Yeah, and then change after that, like a unit of reinforced unit of the Gossiped Archers, and then just like other stuff from there. But what was incredibly annoying was a 20-inch run in charge Alariel charging into about 40 to 50% of my army on shifting objectives, which is a great mission for this list. But when you're stuck in combat against a 3-up save, 6-up ward that heals, like I would, with my Wrathmongers unbuffed, would do like 6-7 wounds to him, to her, and then she would on average heal 6-7 wounds. So it really didn't do much for a good portion of the game. And so it was a game where I thought I lost. I told my opponent I lost. I said, cool, I lost the game. This is right after my draw. I am not a smart man. So I ended up winning by 1 point. But after that was not before us arguing the fact that I had drawn a second time. So yeah, that was a fun and little experience there. But yeah, alphas with high armor saves can be very detrimental to this list just because of your movement restrictions, and it doesn't make it an auto loss, but it makes it a lot harder.
Can you slingshot those Mighty Skull Crushers 3d6, or is it only Demon Tide?
It is only. Are you talking about with the Unfettered Fury?
Yeah.
It is only demon keyword. I don't believe Skull Crushers have the demon keyword.
No. I was just thinking, like, we've just been talking Skull Crushers, and we've just talked about high armor save Cav. Like, if you could 3-6 slingshot them up the board, maybe there is a really good use for them, because that a reinforced unit of mighty Skull Crushers would be the bane of many people's existence, because it'd just be so hard to get them out off the board.
I would love to. Unfortunately, they don't benefit from the proper keyword to get that extra charge. They can get a run-in charge, but they're not benefiting from field charge, and they're not benefiting from Unfair to Fury's 3-6 charge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, just triple checking the beacon of the hunt, or beacon of the hunt. Sorry, it's non-unique Blades of Khorne demon. So you could do it with your Blood Crushers.
Yeah,
but you couldn't do it. But obviously they're not. I mean, they're 3-up save as opposed to 2-up. Anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole I was not planning to go down.
they are worse. Blood Crushers are a 4-up save.
Are they on a 4s?
They were a 3-up save. I'm double checking.
I'm checking it out too. I'm checking it. Wow, 5 wounds. They do have a 6-up ward where the Blood Crushers don't have the ward. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
A 4-up save really kills it for me for Blood Crushers. This right now.
Does it? I mean, let's look at the points. But the points are 180. All right. I mean, it's what, 15 wounds, 180. That's not bad. It's not bad. Speaking of also what's not bad, Evan Markham, another LVO list. I think this went 4-1 as well. Not as high as your 11th. I think it ended like 30 or 40th. I mean, still good performance nonetheless. Well done, Evan. This is a little different, a lot of commonality, but also a lot of differences. You have gone here, so the Bloodbound War Horde. You got your Slaughter Priest, he's got the Favor of Khorne. You've still got 1-2 reinforced unit of Blood Warriors. You've got yourself the Skull Reapers reinforced, the Wrathmongers, 3 units of Wrathmongers. So 1 in the General's Reg, 2 in the second Reg. You've got the Inspiring Deathbringer with the King of Blades and Claws of Karanak. So, Alex, there's a lot in common, a lot of differences. What are the key differences, and like how does it function differently? Like, like what's that reinforced unit of Skull Reapers bringing to the list, and what are some of the things that maybe you had that this list doesn't have? Like, talk to me about the differences between the two.
Yeah, well, it's got less units. It has a little bit less range, so it will suffer a little bit more from like 6 or more objective missions. But that really depends on your opponent. It depends on how reactive you are. I will say Evan is another West Coast player. He's a SoCal player instead of PNW. He is a very talented player, really great guy, really nice guy, always runs a lot of very unique lists, and I think that he's great for just giving that extra variety. In this instance, the amount of Wrathmongers, 15, I think is the sweet spot. I wouldn't go any more above 15, and with them, they are very helpful, as we talked about before, but they always punch up, also very helpful. He's got the 40 Blood Warriors. I cannot imagine a Khorne Mortal list right now without 2 units of 20 Blood Warriors. They're just so helpful. That's 83-up saves that can do mortal wounds when they die, and 3 attacks each on 4s and 3s, 1 rend, 1 damage, with a few of them being 2 rend, 2 damage on the same hit roll. Incredibly helpful. But Skull Reapers, and I have some right here. I am currently in the midst of priming them. I have the old Krongors, the Khorne Vestigors is going to be what mine are. I've not put them on the table per se, but I've TTS'd them, and I have put them on the table once, but I will say I get why he runs Skull Reapers. They tend to be a very contentious issue among Khorne players, whether or not to run them. At LVO, I had chosen not to. They get very complicated because of their rules and their point costs. Skull or Wrathmongers are 120 points for 5, but it's of course 440 points or 220 points. So 100 more points for 5 Skull Reapers. Skull Reapers are for 4-up save, but then besides the 4-up save, they are chosen, right? They have 3 attacks each.
Four attacks each. Four attacks each.
Yep, they're 4 to be crit mortals, 2 damage each, but they are 1 rend always. They are 4-up save, no ward, no possibility of a ward either, unlike chosen. So you get 1 extra attack for a lot less, in my opinion, because there's also a special ability that they have. The one rule that they have on their war scroll says that this unit has a control score of 1 unless they kill an enemy unit. After they kill an enemy unit, the unit gets a control score of 8. So for a unit of 10, for this 440 points, you have 10 models, 2 of which are banners or banner bearers. So you should be 11 on an objective. No, you are not 11 on an objective. You are either 1 or you're 8. So your banner bearers don't matter. They are there, but they don't matter ever. And to me, again, little Timmy brain, I hate that. I hate that so much. I want it to not exist. I want it to not be there. Don't like it. So that's why I don't have Skull Reapers in my list. But I'm looking right now, and on AoS Stat Hammer, I fully put in 20 Blood Warriors, 10 Skull Reapers, Rage Thirster, Unfettered Fury, and I put Scarbrand. And lo and behold, Skull Reapers very consistently, above all the other things I just mentioned, do the most damage the most consistently. So you really sacrifice any type of control for being like, I don't have to worry about control if I just evaporate everything I touch.
Do you have the delivery mechanism? Obviously not as good as Chosen in Slaves, and obviously completely different factions. But if you're making that comparison, like, are they just walking up the board and then waiting to get into combat, or are there ways to get them into combat sooner?
That's a good question. The way that I have played them is I've always played them as a reserve piece. I've always played them not on the front line. I've been very careful with them in the test games I've played. Again, I have not played them in a tournament yet, but like, the numbers are as the numbers are. They are incredibly good offensively. But the control piece of it is the most nerve-wracking part, at least for me. So I've always played them as like a unit that's behind the Blood Warriors, as like part of the counter punch to my opponent's list. So like, I come in, they hit me, I hit back with that, So if they get Ungud, if they get turn 1 charged into, that really sucks. Not because they get any benefits from the charge, but because I want to be able to use that unit later as like a scalpel to just remove something that I don't want on the table. Their mean damage for 10 Skull Reapers is like 19 and a quarter wounds, which is really good. And I've honestly rolled both better and worse than that, but more consistently better. The 6 is causing 2 damage each, 2 mortals each, like Chosen, is just phenomenal. Granted, they are only barely cheaper than Chosen.
I think they're good right now because shooting is probably at its lowest point. Like, you don't see as many high shooting lists. And I think if you are in a shooting meta, this 4-up save, 3 wounds each, 5 models per 220, like, they would be a target. Like, if I'm running Lumineth, I got Sentinels, I'm targeting these every single day, because to your point, like, they will die. It's just that we don't have a lot of shooting, and shooting has been traditionally been reduced. So you are going to reap the rewards right now. So I think my risk to you is, like, keep in mind the meta shift. And we ever see, like, when the Gits bring those catapults come in, right? When you start seeing catapults more and more, this is a dangerous list, and I would maybe reconsider it at a tournament. And again, this is not about Evan versus you. It's just showing off different lists and ideas, and, what works for you, and, run the list that you want to run. But I love the diversity of thought here.
Yeah, I would say the shooting makes this list the most nervous to me. especially being the PNW. Matt Beasley in PNW likes running rattling guns that would decimate the Skull Reapers. We got Stark with his Stormcast, loves to shoot against Skull Reapers. There's a lot of things that are going to create a very bad time in terms of shooting, and it is regional. You might play against people who don't have any shooting in your local meta, and then you don't have to worry. But for those who do, it's not fun.
Just convince Jeremy not to go back to KO.
Oh, he's been talking about it. We'll see.
Oh no. Anything else you want to mention with Evan's list? Again, cool list. Congratulations. I think again 4-1. So still a great performance nonetheless.
I think he did great, and it's a bold. I think it's great. It's bold. It's edgy in the good way. I promise. And I like it. He's a good player.
I think the one call out I'll finally make before we go to the last list, that's more of an Anthony list, is that as an opponent, what do I handle? Like, what do I prioritize? There's these reinforced unit of Blood Warriors ×2. There's this reinforced unit of Skull Reapers. There's 3 units of Wrathmongers. If I want to remove those Wrathmongers to stop the buffs, guess what? I now have unwounded Warriors and Reapers in my face. If I go for those Reapers, and I probably don't have the volume to be able to handle the Blood Warriors given their high armor save, then the Wrathmongers and the Skull Reapers who can die easier are going to get into combat unwounded and are going to have a field day. So it makes really tough decisions for your opponent to make, and then you get to capitalize on it.
Yeah, it's pretty helpful.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Well done, Evan. The last list, and the Daniel, aka Anthony list, but actually was a real person. This is a me list. Look, you've got your 3 thirsters. So we've got Wrath of Khorne, who's the general. You've got Boom Thirster, which is Relentless Hunger and the Halo of Blood. You then have the Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury with reinforced Bloodletters, and then 2 units of Fleshhounds. So this, I think, was a 3-2 list. I think Daniel went 3-2. Correct me if I'm wrong. Apologies if I get that wrong. I don't have the stats in front of me. So there's a little further down the performance, but still, again, out of 300 players going in around the 3-2 or the bottom of 4-1, still a great result nonetheless.
Yeah, it is a incredibly unique list. It has Murder Host as well, which I believe is after they fight, they get a 5-up ward for demons only. This is a hell of a list. This is an Unga list for sure.
So what does this list do? Like, when you read it, ignoring LVO for a second, like when you see this list, like what does it do, and what do you think the game plan is?
That is a hard one to determine. There are so few models and so few units in this list. There's only one way. I mean, like, the good thing is if you fight against this list, you don't need a chess clock. I think, I think this is very much like if you fight against Suns, just they have 5 models. You don't have to worry about a chess clock. Same thing here. They have, granted, it's a lot more than 5 models. It's 3, 23, 33 models instead, but it's only 6 units, right? So you have, and there's no buffs. There are no, besides the 3d6 charge to a friendly unit near the Unfettered Fury, there are no actual buffs that require too much actual range. So this list is very straightforward. I like the double activate that naturally happens between the Wrath of Khorne, Bloodthirster, and either Insensate Rage or Unfettered Fury. There's extra tech between with the Unfettered Fury, giving it a 3d6 charge, just something. The Wrath of Khorne Bloodthirster, though I have done nothing but hate on it this recording, I will say he has a fun little mechanic that allows up to 3 friendly Bloodthirsters to get non-unique Bloodthirsters to get +1 attack in melee. So basically himself and his buddies are all going to be 8 attacks instead of 7. Super duper helpful. It's an interesting list. I guess, is it okay if I go into a criticism?
No, go for it. Go for it. I guess the criticism, or I guess the warning here, right, is if someone to pick this up, like if someone picked this list up and went to take it to their local tournament, it's like cool list, but be mindful of. But again, like just be. It's not. It's the 5. It was 3-2, by the way. I just checked the stats. It was 3-2. Daniel went 106 out of 300. So again, still a great performance considering some of this criticism about to come out, but it's not top tier for these reasons.
First of all, not criticism. I agree. If you went 3-2 at LVO, if you get a positive, you just went to LVO. Wonderful. If you get a positive record, even better. Heck yeah. High fives all around. High fives and shots. I would say my one concern, or the one thing to be mindful of in this type of list, is that, and I guess this might be a biased opinion because of my enjoyment of like tech, is that there are 20 bloodletters with no items to buff them. They are 40 points. In my opinion, bloodletters are overcosted. They're 2 attacks each. They're crit mortals. They're 1 rend, 1 damage. Very helpful, but they are a 5-inch move, 5 up save. They get D3 extra models at the end of each turn if they are in combat, which is cool. But overall, kind of like 200 points for 10 is a lot. And one thing that can be helpful if you have a lot of bloodletters or like a bloodletters and units of fleshhounds is the Herald of Khorne on a skull throne. That is a fun little tech piece that allows just the mechanic for recycling that exists in 4.0. It usually ends up, any type of recycling ends up being one of 2 things: spending a command point and just recycling half a unit somewhere on the table, given the parameters, or roll a dice on a 4-up, you get to recycle. And the Khorne Herald and Blood Throne allows that 4-up dice roll to just recycle half a unit. And if you're running 20 bloodletters, I can't imagine having that list without that possibility of recycling.
I guess the challenge, though, is that is 210 points. That's either lose your fleshhounds and you probably lose 2 or 3 battle tactics that those fleshhounds can score. Caesar Center, take the flank, take their land, anything like insert here. Or you're dropping a Thirster. And I imagine this type of list, the person wants to run the Thirster. But to your point, yeah, it's I have played against the Herald of Khorne on the Blood Throne, and getting that recycle piece in addition to, it's actually, it has the anti-infantry, the crit mortals, 7 attacks. It has the speed. It's quite a flexible little regiment. It is a good call out as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I would personally be running.
I think the other thing for me potentially is the choice of, I know you've gone Halo and Hunger, but I wonder if you're better off having a priest with is it Firebrand that gives you the priest ability? And especially if you don't have the hero buff, it's like, do you bring in Firebrand? But I'm sure you'll tell me the reason why you didn't take why you don't take Firebrand.
I mean, in this list, you would want to run Firebrand. I didn't even realize that till you mentioned it. Yeah, no prayer lore, no manifestation lore, no priests at all, no wizards, obviously. You were running wildly risky in this list. I mean, like, props to Daniel just being
3-2, man. This 3-2, that's awesome.
Positive, a positive record, a winning record with like an arm tied behind your back. Props for sure. That is, yeah, I personally agree with Relentless Hunger and Halo of Blood in this type of list. Just the extra threat that Insensate Rage can sometimes create a scenario where your opponent is making mistakes on deployment or making mistakes during their movement phase because they're so nervous about your utility and your ability to get into combat. But on the flip side, I completely agree with you in terms of utility of wanting to have the benefit of prayers, not because like the manifestation lore matters, because I'll be honest, you have 1 priest and you don't have any wizards. The manifestations for Khorne are bad. And it's depressing how bad they are. But Unholy Flames exists. Chant value 4, +1 to rend. If you roll an 8 or better, it's +1 to rend, +1 to wound. It is a fantastic prayer to throw off on those bloodletters or on one of the bloodthirsters to make them +1 rend. But, it's a give and take.
Yeah, you've got a really good prayer law, and we're going to get into the rules in a second. So this has been a bit of a different order than other talking. So, but I hope that we've actually been able to bring Khorne to life through 3 different lists, and obviously the rich discussion that we've been having, and then the rules are just going to slot in a minute. But for me personally, my play style would be to have that Firebrand Priest Thirster. But I can imagine, then you're relying on potentially, using a command point for magical intervention. Maybe, you want to have more smash and you love the idea, or you got a tech piece for the 6-inch Murderlust rather than the 3-inch Murderlust. So it's not a bad choice. My personal preference would be the Firebrand, especially if I don't have a priest in the faction. You've got a good prayer law. I like your prayer law. I'd want to bring it to the party.
For sure.
Sick. So I guess that this probably leads us to maybe a fast discussion, because we've kind of fleshed it out a little bit, but maybe not. At least we've got some 3 lists to kind of bring this to life. But when you're looking at the battle traits, right, this is maybe not beginner friendly because of the blood tithe mechanic and how it works, and starting off with 0 blood tithe unless you take the Favored of Khorne to start with a blood tithe. Then when things die, you get yourself blood tithe, then you cash in your blood tithe for various things, whether it's Murderlust, Spell Eater, Brass Skull, Meteor, or Slaughter Triumph. All heads must roll. You've got this mechanism. You're relying on things to die. How do you build, make the most, and even play with the mechanics? Like, what tips and tricks would you give me as a Khorne player?
Yeah, taking full advantage of picking your battles if you have the ability to do so, especially because the fact that mortals currently are the kind of better leaning mechanic with the sub-faction, points costs, and war scrolls. You're probably going to be bringing more mortals than not. You never have to worry about wards or ignoring wards or something like that against you, because you're generally not going to have any wards at all. But you also can pick your battles and potentially and choose what to sacrifice. I often find that my games are very much a transaction of unit to unit for the sake of blood tithe. Being able to utilize blood tithe for Murderlust at least once a game, once a turn, can be incredibly helpful. Whether it's, a run and charge, auto run, and then an extra 3-inch move, and then a charge on a mortal unit from a Bloodstoker, whether it's a redeploy and then a Murderlust to get into combat with something that doesn't want to be that wants to make its charge. Whether it's a completely different mechanic to redeploy and then 3-inch Murderlust onto an objective your opponent controls to screw with their turn. Blood tithe can be incredibly important, but almost every single game I've played, it's been 2 abilities that I've used. Murderlust as many times as you can, and also situationally Brascal Meteor. Brascal Meteor from 3rd to 4th went from 3 to 4 blood tithe, but now it's always just 8 dice on a 3-up, 1 mortal wound. That's almost like 80% of the time that is a dead 5-wound hero, unless you roll below average. But you have to, it's like a 65% chance to kill a 5-wound hero. So it's a pretty good chance to get that going, but not guaranteed. I have very rarely encountered a need for Spell Eater Curse, just because of the fact that Places of Power exist, and you can utilize those with your heroes who don't normally have the ability to unbind, to then use that Place of Power and then get an unbind. So I've generally not used that as much as I have in previous editions. So in addition to that Slaughter Triumph and Heads Must Roll, they are fantastic abilities, but because of because of how reactionary Khorne is, I generally don't have the opportunity to utilize either of those abilities.
I think Slaughter Triumph for me at the moment is just one that the meta is not supporting with. You're seeing so many units that are reinforced. Like you were talking earlier in the show about drops. Like most factions seem obsessed with going as low drops as possible, spamming certain units and just trying to get as much value out of those units under a low drop mechanic. And you're not seeing high drop armies with lots of units on the board. So if I'm playing against these ultra elite armies that are hard hitting, that are low drops, to get 8 blood tithe points is really tough. Unless you're playing some type of MSU type, flood the board with 35 Wrathmongers. Like outside of that, like killing 8 units, you or me, like it's a really tough nut to crack. So it's a nice to have if you happen to have a Thirster and if you happen to get the 8. But I think to your point, things like Murder Lust, things like Brass Skull Meteor, these are both very achievable. And I think not spamming, but like using Murder Lust as often as you can is probably better than just trying to save up for these Head Must Rolls or even Slaughter Triumph.
Yeah, it's
in most cases.
I agree completely. And it also becomes an issue of does your opponent know about those abilities as well? I always keep like a reference, for example, like just the war scroll cards that you get from the card deck, right? And I had found that during LVO, I was compelled to, after having just that brief intro conversation with my opponent, there were several games at LVO where I would just give them my cards and be like, these are my mechanics, just so you know. And even then, like, it would take them off guard if I like redeployed Murder Lust and now I'm in combat with something. There was a really good opponent round 5 for me who was a Slanesh player, and he knew what Khorne could do. And even with that, at the end of the game, he was kind of like throwing his hands up and he was like, well, I wasn't able to shoot. I wasn't able to charge. Like, what was I supposed to do? So it can be just like making your, I mean, like, I guess maybe you shouldn't be making your, it really depends. I personally like to give my opponent the heads up, right? So
you absolutely should. You absolutely should.
You should.
And like, you don't want to have this argument or this gotcha or this feel bad for a moment that someone didn't have clarity. And I think I want to loop back to a second to Murder Lust, because this is the one that does have the risk of potentially a feel bad. But before I get to Murder Lust, can I just quickly ask you, the blood tithe starting at 0, so something needs to die to start the Murder Lust process. Do you think there's value in taking the Favored of Khorne to start with 1 blood tithe so that you can then trigger a Murder Lust? Is it actually valuable?
Yeah, that was on my list. That is an auto take for me. Unless you're bringing a Bloodthirster to do the 6-inch Murder Lust instead of a 3-inch Murder Lust, I like 99% of the time would say Favorite of Khorne should be the heroic trait, because your opponent can't prevent that, and you just start the game with 1 or with 1 blood type point. I can't imagine playing without that.
Cool. I just wanted to call that out because it is a good ability, and it's like, do I start with 0? Do I start with 1? Pros and cons. But let's go back to Murder Lust for a second, because this is probably one of the most impactful rules that you have as a faction. And it's one that can not create feel bads, but definitely like being able to tie up an opponent like your Slanesh and not being able to shoot in combat, for example, right? Or being able to use it to deny someone scoring their battle tactic because they were going to go charge into something, but now you've moved into their combat and they can't get out. And like, there's so much disruption abilities in Murder Lust. What are some of the situations, or how do you think about Murder Lust and make the most of Murder Lust? And it's both movement phases, right? Your movement and mine. So a lot of tools in that toolbox.
I use Murder Lust like you just said, toolbox, like a Leatherman or a multi-tool, or
Spell it out for me.
Yeah.
Like, imagine I'm new. Imagine I'm new to Khorne.
Yeah.
Spell it out to me.
It becomes kind of an obnoxious mechanic. Sometimes you know, let's say I want to do seize a center or take the flanks, and I'm given turn 1, and I roll my run move, and one of my 5-inch move models or 7-inch move with with a field sergeant, they don't make the mark. Well, now I can get my mechanic. Now I can get my battle tactic turn 1, because one of those units that didn't go nearly as far as I wanted them to because of dice, I've now controlled the dice, and now they scoot over enough to get in. Let's say my opponent, like we talked about a little earlier, has a cavalry unit with +1 damage on the charge, or impact hits and +1 damage, like some wonderful ogre players. Then you can redeploy d6 inches, so 1 to 6. Then you can murder less 3 additional inches from there. So it costs a command point and a blood tithe, which is a heavy kind of price to pay, but that's a price that you can pay to completely mess with your opponent's turn, if not their entire game. I usually, when that happens, when I at the end of my opponent's movement phase, I see how they'd move, and I find one of two things. They either don't know what Khorne does, or were semi-aware of what they did, and I just kind of explain, hey, I can redeploy and do other stuff like the card shows, or they are overly cautious, and they tend to go, cool, like I need to be outside of 12 inches, or outside of, like, I need to be like 10 inches away from you, because you can do a 6-inch redeploy potentially, and then do a 3-inch murder lust, and then there's a 3-inch barrier from there as well. So there's potentially a 12-inch bubble of me getting into combat with my opponent. So usually they want to be slightly outside of 9.5. So it's like, unless I roll good on my redeploy, I'm not necessarily getting into combat with them, but there's always that risk that I can. And I find the redeploy plus murder lust to be one of the wildest, strongest mechanics of this army, to just shut off opponent's ability to score an objective, opponent's ability to come in and slaughter a unit that they want to kill, with extra damage, rend, etc. on the charge, or impact hits, what have you.
And it makes me think a little bit about Daniel's list as well, which was coming in at 1950. So you start with an extra command point in turn 1. You've gone the 3D. So you got the 6-inch. I was going to say 3D6. No, you have a 6-inch murder lust rather than 3. So there's a lot of really disruptive powers, and the trade-off for that early command point, having 5 to start with, can be very, very powerful too. And maybe that's how the game plan unfolds for Daniel and the Triple Thirster list.
Yeah.
Love it. I think it's a great toolbox. I think my advice to players is don't get overwhelmed. Yes, you've got a whole bunch of things. Pick the ones that obviously are most beneficial to you. But for me, like murder lusting, I would use murder lust almost every turn rather than saving up for these big, slaughter triumph, head must roll, etc., etc.
I agree.
Of the battle formations, do you have any favorites? Like, we have seen Bloodbound War Horde and we've seen Murder Host demonstrated so far. We haven't really thought about Coronate Legion or Brass Stampede, other than obviously the Brass Stampede restriction of building and the limitations of Cav and the Strike First mechanic. Anything you'd comment on the other two?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Brass Stampede. Murder Host, I really, really wish it was better, but just giving a 5-up ward to non-monsters, it makes sense, because all the monsters have a 5-up ward anyways, but besides a Korgorath, which is, I believe, neither a mortal nor a demon, just has Blades of Khorne. I don't believe it has Bloodbound keyword, but
I know it does. It does. It has blood.
It does have Bloodbound. I was actually a little happy but it's still very overpriced. But the giving a 5-up ward to a select number of units, basically bloodletters, potentially a hero, or fleshhounds. It's super underwhelming ability. I really, really hope in the book that they change whatever Murder Host is or completely replace it. Same with Brass Stampede, unless they completely change the point costs of cavalry. Like I said, I run Bloodbound Warhorde. That is because I am explicitly a mortal player, and it does nothing but benefit. And Khornate Legion, as we talked about before, it is good on paper, I think. I definitely don't disagree that it is absolutely a strong mechanic. But when you end up building your list and you start playing with your points, you find some restrictions with the ability to kind of like have exactly what you want on the demon side, have exactly what you want on the mortal side, to be able to have them synergize well, because they don't synergize at all. And in order to have them to do well, activating one after the other, it requires other units to back them up more often than not, or a very expensive unit on one side, like a Bloodthirster plus a unit of Blood Warriors or Skull Reapers or Reinforced Wrathmongers, and then a buff unit there, and then it becomes a good mechanic. But then you have far less in your list than you should.
Yeah, it's a really interesting... I can't say I'm a big fan of it. And maybe it's because of some of the restrictions of building lists. And, somebody asked, a question around, do you think maybe like Korgus Kull, if Korgus returns, be the link between the mortals and the demons? And if you had like this one unit outside of Scarbrand who could bring both sides of it, maybe that unlocks things a little better for you. But it's definitely a balancing act, and I guess it's more tax for you to have on the table, right? Like, it's already hard enough. Do you want to be trying to setting up these sequences between mortals and demons? Some people, yeah. For some people, it's like too much. Like, it's like, right, I'm being pulled by going for my battle tactics, holding objectives or claiming objectives, and now I've got to try to work out sequences to make sure I take advantage of my Butchers of Nations. Too hard.
I honestly think that when the book comes out, Khornate Legion would be the sub-faction or the battle formation that would see the biggest change, if not a complete rewrite. Obviously Korgus Kull is either going to come out with the book or is going to come out later on. I was very excited personally because I like the lore, I like the game. The fact that Korgus Kull is like officially a demon prince, but doesn't have a model, and was weirdly described in one of the books, in one of the perspectives of his like lieutenants. So like I have a good idea in my mind of what the model is going to look like just from the description of the lore, but like, he's definitely a demon prince. He should be coming out soon with the book, hopefully. And I agree. It would be wonderful if he either bridged the gap or if he was like a hybrid unit that does benefits for both demons and mortals. But overall, I hope that in the new book, that there isn't as much of a differentiation between you have to run demons or you have to run mortals, or else you're playing with one arm tied behind your back. I would love to, and maybe Korgus Kull is the solution to that. Once they come out with his model, war school rules, whatever.
Yeah, I feel like it's a list building restriction, because if you look at how Big War works, where Big War forces you to have 1-for-1, it's a lot easier to build out those regiments, because you've got these cheaper heroes, the units do their thing, but you're also dependent on expensive heroes. Like they take up a lot of points that you just don't get a lot of units for what you need to make this work.
Yeah, I agree there. It's hard.
I feel you. Maybe in the day of Korgus Kull, we'll be back. I think we've already had this chat, right? Like Firebrand, I really like it. In fact, you know what? I'm going to make the claim right now. All three of them, good choices. It depends on what you like. I like all three. I don't think any of them are better than the other. I think it's just play style, list build, what you need, what you like.
Could not agree more. Totally. I'm completely on the same side as you on that one. They are all good, list dependent. There's no bad one.
Yeah, most discussions that I have, there's like one or two standouts and one that's trash. Not this one. This actually, all three are useful and viable, and all. You need a priest. You want to have more priest? Go Firebrand. You want to go, it really lean into that murder lust. Relentless Hunter, love it. If you want to start off and be a bit more aggressive and not rely on that first kill, Favorite of Khorne.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Or Favorite of Khorne can also be very reactionary. So you can keep that extra blood type and your opponent won't know what you're going to use it with.
Yeah. All right. I think that one was going to be the simplest one because I think we've talked about it. And all three of them are good. It's just, how you build your list. How you build your list. Ones that I think, on the other hand, I think there is a clear popularity. Although we did see a Halo of Blood. We did see one Halo of Blood from the three lists we demonstrated. We didn't see a Collar of Contempt, but we did see Agarth, the King of Blades. I swear that just sounds like one of those late night television commercials selling me dodgy TV knives. Like he's like the latest ShamWow robes.
Yeah. Oh, I obviously I love Angrath, King of Blades, or Argarath, King of Blades. I will say, out of all the games I've played with Khorne, it is not always something that comes up. There are more games that I've played. This artifact has never ever come to be relevant, but when it does, it's like debilitating because you pick an enemy unit, it's an enemy hero that is in combat range of that hero. And for that combat phase, they don't get ward saves. So it doesn't have to be from the hero with the artifact. It can be from anyone that is in combat range of that enemy hero that's gotten the debuff. So it's very, very helpful. It's what I play. But I will say, that being said, it's actually only happened or been relevant a very small handful of times. Whereas the Color of Contempt can also be very helpful, especially in if you were to take Evan's list with one priest and no wizards and no unbinds, you could bring a Color of Contempt and it becomes a fun tech piece, and obviously Halo Blood is fun with Bloodthirsters.
And we should have pretend that I didn't have the wrong spelling there on the King of Blades, even though I sent it for a review. It's not 100% my fault, but it's also accurate now. It's all accurate now. But yeah, it's very, very clear. Wards aren't as prevalent as they have been in fourth. I think third, but they are good. It's great to shut it down, and it's impactful. So King of Blades, love it. Stick with it. Halo of Blood, I'm not the biggest fan. I'm not the biggest fan. And Collar of Contempt,
situational.
It's fine. I think just King of Blades is just clearly the winner.
I will say, playing my Khorne list, experimenting with the Skull Reapers prevents me from having any natural unbinds because of just the way that I run my list. And I have found that I consistently am annoyed if I play on a list or play on a map that doesn't have an appropriate amount of places of power, or at least a place of power that's convenient for my heroes. And so then I don't really have the ability to do too many unbinds. So having at least one unbind on the table, if you don't have the Oathsworn, definitely helpful.
Yeah, and this probably is like a bit of a 1-2 punch if you take the priest.
Yeah.
Have priest thirster and maybe Collar of Contempt thirster as well. That could be useful.
Yeah. So it's like 3.0 priests.
Yeah. If you have no other priests, because again, are you that worried about magic? It's been toned down a little, but do you use probably better to have this than use Spell Eater, right?
Yeah, Spell Eater covers a lot of 2 blood type points is just a little much.
there'll be a couple of spells where you're against that Daughters of Cain. You definitely want to shut off that Heart Rend, Mind Razor before they go into combat. There's a couple of like those critical spells that you know that you want to shut off, and maybe you don't want to roll the dice. But for the vast majority, it's worth the roll of the dice rather than 2 Blood Tithe.
Totally agree.
Again, ignoring what I wrote for Agarth, but everyone's paying attention. These, again, I said earlier that I'm a big fan of your prayer law, and I think they're both very fair. Although Unholy Flames being chanting value of 5, it is unlimited as well. So probably worth going for the magical intervention to get this off early. But do you think all 3 kind of are useful, or are there ones that you kind of use more often, and when do you use them? And like, talk to me about prayers.
Yeah, I think that, so going with the one that I like the least, I think that if you have multiple priests, Wishbane Curse is not a terrible idea. Especially when you fight against armies that have a lot of like level 2 wizards, where generally those armies are kind of relying on the fact that their level 2 wizards are level 2 wizards. Whether it's Soul Blight with multiple one or more Mortarks at 2 cast, whether it's OBR with the guys on the throne who are cast 2. I have the army. I cannot tell you why I can't recall their name. Soul Reapers. Soul Masons. Yeah. So being able to turn them from a level 2 to a level 1 sucks bad. You don't really need to do the extra benefit on the 8-up chant. But since most Khorne lists that both I've played and I've seen among other people generally only have 1 priest, the other 2 abilities end up being incredibly helpful. Unholy Flames, far and away, ends up being the best one. When you make Skull Reapers Rend 2, when you make Blood Warriors Rend 2, they just increase so significantly their damage output. Even better if you make them +1 to wound. There's a reason why my list had a exalted or aspiring Deathbringer, and that's because when he does the double activate between him and a Blood Warrior unit, they naturally both units get +1 to wound. So it's not super relevant on them, but it can be. But even then, just the added rend, so you don't have to worry about getting the 10 up. You can just go for the 5 on Blood Warriors, and you're already probably going to be wounding on 2s, hitting on 4s with Rend 2 damage 2, or damage 1, or Rend 3 damage 2 with the special weapons that they have, the glaives that they have, 1 for 10, so 2 for 20. It becomes such a powerful prayer. Same with Blood Boil. Situationally, I find Blood Boil to be really helpful if I already have God dollars or ritual points on a priest and I want to do a counter prayer. Blood Boil, like you see from the screen here, it's just 18-inch range, anti-horde, but more often than not, I've used this ability on like an enemy, one model enemy, like monster hero god unit. Cause if I can get that 8+, and I know I can get that 8+, whether it's because of the fact that it's just my turn near a place of power, or maybe I'm even counterspelling for a +1, -1 inside of the skull altar, which is what it gives to people who have ascended the skull altar, +1 to prayer. Then the mortal wound doesn't matter, but then subtracting 1 to wound on like a Gargant, on Manfred, on Kragnos, it's not fun.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Not to me anyway. I will say as well, we've obviously got Soulblight Gravelords and Gits coming. Well, Gits is here. When those catapults come, I think you'll see a new wave of enthusiasm for us. You got Soulblight Gravelords, so who knows what's going to happen there, but you might start seeing more and more infantry, more and more reinforced infantry, whether it's zombies, skellies, whether it's your Git hordes. Obviously the +2 movement from Field Sergeant is definitely supporting a push for infantry. So Blood Boil is going to be a really useful spell, a prayer, when you get those particular matchups. I love it, but like against elite units, probably not unless you're going for the 8+. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, like you've got good prayers, but you know, I'm hearing that you're not so high on your manifestations. Is that how you feel about like I played against them and like they feel underwhelming compared to previous editions where I've like cursed the name of Hex Gorgeous Skulls. like I remember one game it killed 2 of my wizards in one turn. It just like roll the 8, like just pop or gets wizards. Like there were 4 wounds at the time. Like whoop, whoop. It was the worst.
I've done that multiple times, and I miss that so much. Being able to look at a 4-wound Gits wizard and be like, well, sorry, was wonderful. No offense.
The Wraithax was fine. Like I played against Khorne a few times, and like the Wraithax, is it the bleeding icon? Like there's 1 or 2 of them. I'm like, yeah, this is all right.
So back in the day, like a year ago, Wrathax was not was kind of meh, but the Hexforger Skull shut off almost all wizards at all. And then the icon was fantastic on control score, I believe, and no rally near it. No redeploy and no rally. That was I'm sorry. I'm thinking of the Unmade. Too many dang rules that don't exist anymore.
It was good. Like I remember the Wraithax being the worst of the 3.
Yeah.
Hexgore just was always the one that got off, and then you'd prioritize the icon.
Yeah. I will say, I have played now that so my Skull Reaper on my Skull Reaper list that I've been kind of testing the waters with, doesn't have Oathbound or the Oathsworn. Doesn't have the ability to have that in the list. So you got to play straight Khorne, and the manifestations have been super underwhelming. I've tested them. The skulls, they share a wound pool. Makes sense like any other manifestation that's more than 1 model in this edition. They just don't do a lot, and the -1 to cast, potentially -2, I believe, is just kind of They don't do much in combat. The icon, now that it doesn't move, I don't mind. I don't like, but I don't mind the ability to shut off the ability to use commands if the Khorne player rolls an 8 on 2 dice, so almost a 50% chance on 2 dice if your opponent declares.
Yes, I just want to call that out. It's less than 8%. Yeah, an average 2d6 roll is 7.
7. Yeah.
So I think statistically, like it's slightly below average. But it's also a range of 8. And I was actually, while you were talking, sorry to cut you off, I was thinking of my own experience with the bleeding icon, and it's great to bunker, right? If you want to have this defensive castle, put your blood warriors, chuck down your icon, and just accept the charge, amazing. But like if you're being fast, mobile, aggressive, it's easy to stay outside of 8 and just shrug your shoulders.
Yeah. I agree. I think that it would be really, really helpful if you're expecting your opponent to kind of like bunga into you and you have the ability to castle. But just the fact that it doesn't move anymore is huge bummer to me.
But it does mean you can get it off within 9. So I guess that's going to help.
True.
Like again, the castle. But yeah, like like I remember it going, yeah, when it goes off, it's a really good prayer. Like when you hit the 8, you'll love that you hit the 8. But when you don't hit the 8, you're like, oh, this is stupid. Yeah. It's just made someone charging into me easier.
Yeah, exactly. I will say I have played with the axe, and the axe's ability, it used to be like a move over ability doing D3 mortal wounds. Now it's in the charge phases when it happens, which is a lot less sexy. But like when it happens, it is fun.
3 attacks, 3s, 2s, 2 for D3 damage. Like it's a decent profile.
It's not nothing. Yeah.
It's not nothing. It's not a bad little piece.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad little piece. And Alex, maybe before I get into some final comments, I wouldn't mind just some general thoughts on the skull altar. How do you use it? Where do you set it up? Is it important to you? Anything that you'd call out on the skull altar?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start that off by saying that I found a very interesting trend among players. Maybe it's a regional thing. Maybe it's a West Coast thing. Maybe it's
I think I know what you're about to say, and I'm going to partially agree with you. Say it.
Maybe I'm going to say some people don't play with their terrain piece. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like I was talking to an OBR player the other day, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't play OBR. Like, it's no, just straight up no." But then I talked to the Fire Slayers player, and the Pizza Oven is still popular, but it's not as must includes.
Yeah.
Where does the skull altar stand?
Skull altar is one of those unique ones, right? It is kind of a bigger footprint, but smaller height wise than a Herdstone. Despite that, it is 4 wounds less than a Herdstone, but whatever. It's got Herdstone has an expiration date, as we all know and love. No offense, Nuge. Love you. But it is.
I was going to ask you very soon. Why are you comparing it to a Legends War Scroll? Sorry, not sorry.
I got so mad during LVO. I got paired because we both drew on the second round of LVO or something like that. At least initially drew. We played each other around going from 2 to 3 actually. And I remember asking how many wounds it was. And when he told me it was 14, I was like, no offense. I was like, are you serious? So it was just a fun little thing. But so the terrain piece, it is kind of an oblong shape, almost like a T-frame because of the way that it's shaped, but it's not very big. So unlike other armies like Seraphon or OBR, you can find yourself fitting your objectives or your terrain piece in good spots more often than not. Especially because of the way that it kind of like jets out with the staircase at the end. So you can put it in all sorts of different ways. I have never not played a game in 4.0 where I have never played a game in 4.0 where I've not put it on the table. It is small enough where you can put it there. I don't always put the priest in there, depending on if I need to kind of scribble on a terrain piece, because you can't be inside of it and be within 3 inches of another terrain piece or objective. So it's never a possibility. But if you look at the rules that are on the screen here, I sometimes will put it in my deployment zone. Sometimes I will put it within 3 inches of the priest, so I can just go in turn 1. But sometimes I just throw it up halfway up the board to bait and a very easy take their land, so that my opponent can get within combat range, and I can potentially just go in on my turn to that unit that's so close to my board edge, which doesn't usually work out as bait, but it's something that exists. But Hatred of Sorcery is a surprisingly effective tool. And I probably had that conversation with you at World Championships with my kind of, I don't want to say resentment, but my displeasure with Khorne when I was not playing them because of the fact they lost their table-wide 5-up spell ignore. But that 18-inch spell ignore that's not wholly within 18, just within 18, you put that within your deployment zone conservatively, or within your territory conservatively, you are more often than not almost always getting that the ability to have that 5-up spell ignore, regardless of the fact that you are, very close to it, because it's not wholly within. So, and it just adds to the fact that you can, you don't automatically get a blood type point on the 5-up. You have to have a priest inside of it, but it just adds to it when you actually do have a priest inside of it. And I've told my opponents, if I, before they cast, I'm like, hey, like before you do that anti-horde spell on my 20 blood warriors, like I have this ability. And sometimes they say, oh, cool. I'll just do a different spell. And sometimes they say, cool, you know what? I am still going to do this spell. And they, cast it, I don't unbind it, and I roll that 5 up, and I just go, thank you for the blood tie. Like it's a wonderful mechanic. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and actually kind of reminds me of what you were talking earlier about with the Realm Gore Ritualist, where putting on a Slaughter Priest 160 points sitting in the back, formally garrisoning this terrain feature is a pretty expensive, like sitting on the terrain. But when you got a 110 point idiot that you can just leave in the backfield, get that 5 up, generate the extra blood type points, get the +1 to chanting and things like that. It's not bad. Like, it's not a bad little trade piece. And again, it reminds me of Orcs, where, if you put like a mega boss on that tower, bad trade. When you can get access to like a really cheap hero, for example, your crew boys have that little hobgrot little idiot for like 100 points. Cool. Sit in the backfield. Go protect the home. Go just generate me things and then come out when I need you to come out.
Yeah, it's incredibly helpful. The ability, I mean, all terrain pieces, I think, in 4.0 are way better and way more, I would say, a utility piece than anything. The problem with this one is its size and its ability to be destroyed. I'm double checking something here right now.
I don't think it's that bad. While you check something, I'm going to say I don't think the terrain is as bad as you think it is. Like, yeah, it's big, but it's not big. Like, it's not OBR, it's not Gitz, it's not Seraphon. It's not that big. In fact, I would say you're on the smaller side. Like, you're like Charnel Throne size terrain. So I don't think it's that bad.
So I haven't played in a tournament since LVO. I've hosted a tournament since then, but you got me really nervous on this screen. I'm so sorry. They are 10 health, not 8. So I saw this 8 and I was like, no, like, they are way weaker than I initially thought. But or did I play that wrong? But no, they are.
I don't know what you're talking about. It says 10 on the screen.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yes. 10. Yes. Always. But yeah, being 10 health still keeps them to be pretty reliable. I have only lost my Skull Altar, I want to say maybe once or twice in many, many games. And usually it's against something that overkills, like, a unit of 4 Morgas, 3d6 charged into my Blood Warriors, and one of them got into the could only get into the Skull Altar, basically one-shotting it essentially with all their buffs up. And yeah, usually that thing does not die, especially when there's somebody inside of it. You can't just be set up right next to it because somebody's currently in it. And so you find yourself a fun little terrain piece that your opponent can't just immediately take their land off of, and also like generates some pretty decent buffs.
Yeah, it's whenever I've gotten to the Skull Altar, it's like turn 4, turn 5 when it doesn't matter. It's durable enough, and if you put the hero in it, you'll be able to defend like most things at Deep Strike. Yes, Stormcast, and there's a few others, but like those tree revs, those Canary, those things that come in and just like go to attack it, like great. It's probably going to survive a couple of rounds of tree rev attacks. Yeah. Like yes, there'll be some things, but then those things, like those committed things, aren't going into the rest of your force. So is it really a bad thing? Like, these are nice to haves. They're not critical. If you don't have this terrain feature, I don't think your army functions much differently.
No, I'll be honest, it doesn't.
It's not Gits where you get the regeneration based off the terrain feature, so protected at all costs. This is like, cool. No, nice to have.
Yeah, it's like OBR. It's like, oh, okay. Like, maybe I play, maybe I don't. Who knows?
Oh no, it's not OBR. OBR is no. I'm not putting it down. Like it's massive. It's huge. Mm-hmm. It's way too big. I'm going to ask you a couple of burning questions and bring this home. I know it's getting late for you, and no. I mean, we could talk shop till the cows come home. Just looking at a couple of the final Discord questions. All right, question from Michael D. What would it take to make Blood Crushers more viable? So we already talked a little about Blood Crushers. The 4-up save kind of surprised us.
Yeah, Michael is a local of mine, so I know exactly who that is. He is definitely in the Portland area, very close to me. Blood Crushers are hard to make viable right now. I have tried to build lists, and I every single time build a list and then just delete it because it doesn't have very many good mechanics. There used to be a pretty decent amount of synergy between mounted heroes, mounted mortals for Skull Crushers and a Mighty Lord of Khorne on a Skull Crusher, or like a Herald on a Blood Crusher and then a unit of Blood Crushers. These benefits still exist between the units and the and the cavalry battle formation. However, you are always getting diminishing returns right now. It's a combination of way too overcosted cavalry units for both mortals and demons, and kind of subpar war scrolls, specifically subpar war scroll with the Blood Crushers. So I would love to run that list, and I have the ability to do so if I wanted to, but I just it's an uphill battle right now.
No, I agree. I agree. At a 3-up save, I think 160 is 180 is probably fair. At a 4-up save, 150, 140, it's top 50. Yeah,
150, 140 is a lot more fair. Can they still do the impact hits? They're still crit mortals, but they're only 2 attacks each. It's
yeah, it's a little underwhelming. But who knows? Give me a priest on a juggernaut. Give me some extra stuff. More juggernaut things on the board is good. A couple of other burning questions. You don't use Karanak. Do you have any comment around? I mean, the question here is what decision process for target and how are you utilizing to sequence? I don't know if you have looked at Karanak or something that you use often. I certainly haven't seen Karanak in a long time. I'm quickly bringing up the War Scroll to see what it does and the value. Look, you
Karanak's really fun. So I have not actually brought him to a tournament, but I have tested him out a little bit. He's fun with his little extra benefit with other Fleshhound units. It's kind of fun to add 2 to their charge roll for them. I like his ability to move, really. That's the reason why you take him. It's because of the
stalk to prey.
Yeah, and he can have a Mighty Lord of Khorne in his battalion, and a Mighty Lord of Khorne can have him in his battalion as well. So it's a fun little dynamic of being able to have a weird sub-commander, unique character or not. The ability to move just a flat 8 inches in the movement phase, as long as you're just barely within, just barely closer than you were before to your opponent, can be huge. That means that you can do an 8-inch curve, just a centimeter or 2 closer to that hero than not, which could mean so many different things. It can mean that you are suddenly on an objective that you shouldn't be on, or that your opponent wasn't expecting you to be on. Maybe you are far closer to a unit to prevent instances of countercharge, or maybe you're blocking a charge for a manifestation, or maybe you're in combat with a static manifestation that messes up your opponent's game. There's so many different dynamics that are involved, and his point cost and that utility, I see it. It's just in my list personally right now. I don't have the ability to invest in that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I look at it, yes, the points is fair. 110 points, not bad. Ward, 7 health. Combat is okay. 6 attacks, 4s, Ren 1 for 2 damage. Like, do I need the +2 to charge for Flesh Hounds? Usually not. They're not really there to go do a bunch of damage. Although it's passive, so that would work for redeploy. That would work for counter charge.
Yeah,
it's a passive ability. So that would work on if you want to slingshot and tie something up. The quarry piece, like, how much do I really value the Stalk the Prey? I don't put a lot of value on it, or maybe I'm just not seeing it on the table as a valuable. Sure, there'll be a couple of niche pieces, but when I can get a Realm Gore Ritualist for the same price, or I can get something else for 110 points, I just don't know that I'm building a plan or I have a good idea. And it's a regiment leader, right? So I've got to...
He can be... Karanak can be a regiment leader if you want, because of course it is a hero, but he can also be in I believe it's a Mighty Lord of Khorne. Let me double check.
No, because the regiment option is 0 to 1 Mighty Lords of Khorne. So you can have a Mighty Lord of Khorne in your... So you've ever looked at the Mighty Lord of Khorne.
So Mighty Lord of Khorne allows for any Blades of Khorne, any Bloodbound Warmonger, so any foot hero that is mortal hero that is not the Mighty Lord, and then 01 Karanak. So
yes.
Yeah.
So now I've got to say, if I want to make the most of it, I'm now going to take a Mighty Lord of Khorne, which is 130. We're now looking at 240 investment. I just don't see it. I don't see it personally.
Yeah, and I get that. I agree with you overall. I think that right now, personally, I can't imagine using Karanak, but I see its utility, and maybe with a battle scroll or a new GHB or a new book, he ends up being more viable.
If Flesh Hounds were cheaper, if Flesh Hounds were closer to like Griff Hounds, which were like 80 points, then maybe I'm interested. Yeah, 5 wounds, so 5 models for 2 health each, so 10 wounds. Griff Hounds get 6 models, 2 health. They're both beasts. They are 80 points versus 110. Yeah, I think maybe the Flesh Hound piece is a little priced too much for me, which is then why am I doubling down on Karanak to tap into the Flesh Hounds. So that's my thinking. That's...
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest. If you make if Flesh Hounds go to 80 points and nothing else changes, you've now incentivized me to run a demon list so much more. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Flesh Hounds are a price for me personally. I think they're priced a little too high. I look at have a very similar role to the Griff Hounds, and even though Griff Hounds have 1 extra model, they don't have nearly as cool rules as you do. 80 to 90 points, you got me as a buyer. 110 points, no, thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, totally agree.
Last 2 questions. In your opinion, we haven't talked enough about Scarbrand today, so let's bring it up. Scarbrand, in your opinion, the 3d6 charge, does it make it worthwhile taking it over the other Thirsters? We have seen Thirster lists and none of them had Scarbrand. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Scarbrand's a fun one because I had built some lists. I didn't bring them to any tournaments. I had seen it at a few different areas. But there was a issue that existed at the time of LVO where there was some misunderstanding as to what supersedes what, whether the app or the documents on the Warhammer community site are more important than the other in terms of like official rules. Scarbrand on the Warcom site with all the documents does not have the ability to bring any other bloodthirsters or anything special besides like any demon unit that's not a hero. However, on the app, up until a couple of updates ago, so before LVO, after LVO, you could bring Scarbrand in your list, and you could bring 0-1 bloodthirsters, just like the Wrath of Khorne bloodthirster, which to me thematically makes sense. He is the army's only war master. He's an overpriced, non-fly 8-inch move bloodthirster who's a named character. It makes sense to me that he could bring 0-1 bloodthirsters. However, that was not a correct thing. That was apparently just error. Maybe this is a little tinfoil hat. Maybe that was something that is meant to be for the battle or for the battle tome. Who knows? But the fact that I was building lists right after LVO with Scarbrand and another Thirster in one regiment, only to find out very quickly that was not correct. And then in the FAQ, I believe in January, they kind of doubled down saying, yeah, no, that was never supposed to be a thing, our bad. So kind of killed my incentive and my enthusiasm to run Scarbrand because you couldn't bring him and a Thirster in the same regiment. Again, despite my protest, he is way less consistent in crazy damage than he was in 3.0. And he's more expensive. But he still is 3d6 charged, and he still is somebody who threatens your opponent on being like, cool, I'm gonna not like, he's an area denial piece potentially, but
I wouldn't mind if, I wouldn't mind that Carnage be like Ren 3, like really make it scary, make it feel scary. Like obviously like the 8 damage is scary, but like if you can save stack, you've got really good, armor save, you can probably deny Carnage. Unless you obviously hit the crit model, then that's a different story entirely. But really make that scary. Dial it up. While we're talking about the future, we know that, it looks like there's a new battle tome coming. We don't know for a fact, but I think smart people can predict that one of those pictures are Khorne. What would you like to see in the battle tome? Is it units, rules? And by the way, folks, jump into Discord at this point. Leave your comments in the comment section. What's your wish list look like? What does the future of Khorne look like? What do you want to see?
That is a fantastic question. I have a large enough collection, and I love the army enough where my knee jerk would say, hey, as long as it's something that I have fun with, that is the most important factor to me personally. I like tech pieces. I hope that we can continue to have those tech pieces. However, outside of my own personal view, from a macro scale, I would like to see less kind of segregation between mortals and demons. That exists in a lot of the armies, a lot of the mono god armies, but I feel like it's most prominent in Slaanesh and Khorne, more so on the Khorne side. Like at least Slaanesh with mortals and demons combined, there's the synergy of the spells being incredibly good, using euphoric killers, all these other different things. You don't get that in Khorne because of the blood tithe mechanic, frankly. So you're very dependent on having blood tithe to have a good kind of balance between your mortal and demon units in a Khorne list. You lack that otherwise. So I find that I would like to see either mechanics that can go between mortals and demons. I know that in the way the Games Workshop kind of thinks about and the way that they've written these rules, that's kind of more wish listing. So I'm not expecting that to happen, but that's what I would like. But more realistically, I would like to see a point reduction on the demon units to make the sub-faction like the Khornate Legion double activate demons to mortals, something more viable, which must require some type of point reduction for the demons in particular, in my opinion.
All right, we're not getting away with your wish listing the points. Let's big brain this. What is on your Christmas list for Santa Khorne? What new models or what new things are coming? I've got my two wish lists ready to go.
Okay, well, we might share one of them. Korg's Cold.
No, we don't share.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm very excited about Korg's School. There is a short story in the game on the Warhammer community site that describes it. Has his lieutenant, one of his lieutenants near the end of. Oh God, what was the campaign? It was the campaign.
Yeah.
I think it was the Dawnbringer one. Yeah, it was the Dawnbringer.
Broken Realms. Broken Realms was the one before that, and then Dawnbringers.
So in the Dawnbringer one, there's like his lieutenant, which is like a Bloodstoker, like looks down, like he gets knocked to the ground, and he gets like helped up by Korgus, and he has this like view of what Korgus looks like, and it's like it looks for like a second he looks like a demon prince, blinks he looks like a mortal, and then that same description is used in one of those final Broken Realms books, or in Broken Realms that happens, and then the Dawnbringer when he actually kills, like perma kills, Sureheart, like forever. That's why he's getting Legends. Spoiler. Then he actually ascends to demonhood. You describe him in a similar way. So like, I'm very excited to have like a named demon prince that's not Be'lakor. I would love to see the Krongors. This is a very bad Krongors come back. I know that we have Slungors, we got Zangors. Come on, we need Pestigors, we need Krongors, bring them back. I guess those would be my only two, if knee-jerk reaction. Yeah.
Love it. My wish listing is the same thing I do every Khorne video. The first one being I want Valkyria back, and I want that goddess back on the table with some epic sculpt. You do what you did to Be'lakor, not Be'lakor's size, but she deserves a sick model. And you have me, well, not Alex. He's run away probably to go get that.
No, I'm here. No.
This is a beast.
You're inspired.
I love that model. I love her in Total War, and I'd love her to be on the table. And like this, I always read her rules and inspired, like this angel of death coming from the sky, like a anti-Indrasa, comes down, strikes hard on the battlefield, causes terror amongst the opponents. That to me, giving some fourth dimension, I guess, coming in from reserve would be huge for Khorne. The other thing that I would wish is I look at the Korgorath, your only monster that's not a hero, and I'm so underwhelmed. Give me something juicy. Give me like 130, 160 size base monster. Not a hero.
No.
Monster.
No, not a hero. Like a Mutalith.
A Mutalith, like I don't know, a Maw Crusher that's been based off Khorne, or something like on mad roids, and its role is to just go forward and smash. Like just absolutely rips and tears, like what a Korgorath meant to be. But again, it's hit the juice and it's ready to generate blood tithe for you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally. I would say special shout out to, I play way too much Total War Warhammer 3. There is a named legendary lord that was a free LC named Arbal the Undefeated. And I have an affinity to old ugly models. And my Arbal is this one. It is the actual Arbal model painted in my color scheme, which is like 30K world leaders. And I would love to see him recreated as a model, just like Khorne's personal Khorne flesh hound, like his actual buddy boy, and like a mortal champion on top. It's like the perfect fusion of both. I know it will never happen, but that is actually one of my actual wish list units to come out.
Either we've had this conversation or you're a brother from another mother, because I have gone on my Slaanesh and remade Azazel and T'Challa as Age of Sigmar model. So like I love, like I've got the old T'Challa and I wanted to make a new one. I love Azazel. I've got a new one. So anyway, yes, please tap into some of that rich fantasy lore, especially now we're in the old world, and old world is a completely different timeline and some of these people are not around. That Archibald, I love that that model. Yes, the Mighty Lord of Khorne with Karanak is kind of like that, but I think, juice it up. Oh, imagine like the Morgrunter, but in like Karanak form, where it's like a big doggo that's being ridden, and it's like I don't know, again, it's on the juice, it's Gold's G, hitting the roids. It's
I can see that. That's a good idea. Right. Honestly, I would love to see that.
Sign me up. Alex, if people want to chat to you, where can they find you? And any shout outs? I assume I'm going to shout out the wonderful t-shirt and logo you have at the background.
My team, we are Corsairs. It's West Coast primarily. However, we got players on the East Coast as well. We're always growing. We're a great time. Hang out with us. We like having house parties and having a good time. Right now, currently in between any sort of streaming or podcast like I used to. So nothing really to shout out there, but I would just like to say, hey, come say hi. Age of Sigmar is a great community. I really, really enjoy the fact that we all can just talk to each other and there's no kind of like, weird situations about like, ooh, that person is, oh, it's AoS coach. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. Like, come say hi, have a drink, have fun, have a good time, yell until your voice leaves you. And that is what I would say. But I would also say for you, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, whether it's World Champs, whether it's LVO, whether it's these podcast episodes. We have a massive time difference, so I appreciate you, taking the time to hang out today.
That's awesome. And, Alex is correct. Like we went drinking a few years ago and I think Jeremy tried to give me his shirt literally off his back. And in front of like Matt's missus and all these random girls. I didn't know that you were partners at the time, but I'm like, this is super weird, but I'll get a Corsair shirt eventually.
Yeah, well, I'll get you one. Hey man, you will coordinate. I'll get you a jersey.
The SoCal crews kind of crumbled and like they're all fractured now. So I don't know if I'm a part of United anymore. So I'm ready to be dominated. It's whoever gets me a shirt first between bottom table bullies or tough crowd or the Texas guys. I'm ready. I'm ready to be indoctrinated.
7 to 10 business days.
Folks, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I think, as you can see, Alex and I could talk till the cows come home. There's a lot of complexity when it comes to Khorne, a lot of passion, and a lot of fun. And I think there's a lot of really cool list building because it's not this mono build. I think all three of the lists that we showed that went really well at LVO were all very different. And yes, there was some like spammable Blood Warriors, but you saw a lot of list diversity. So that's a good, healthy sign for Khorne. And if you want to talk more Khorne, both music or the actual faction, Discord down below. We have a wonderful Discord community full of like 11,000 of you all talking Age of Sigmar and music and on things that we'll enjoy. But Alex, thank you for your time. You go do your sleep thing. I'm probably going to go cook dinner because the missus is probably going to come in the door any minute now and she'll want. I work from home today. She went to the office, so it's fair that I cook her something delicious.
Okay, well, good. Have fun.
See you all. Peace out. Bye. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AoS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a 1-1 on a spellcast.